Before I read today's scripture, I just want to say how grateful I am that even after 3 years, we got to study Matthew really, really well. I'm going to miss it. And I'm so grateful that we get to move on to the rest of the Bible to develop a full understanding within our church. So with that being said, if you will stand up and read with me Matthew chapter 25, starting in verse 14. For it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted to them his property. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. And then he went away. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. So he also had the 2 talents made to 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Now, after a long time, the master of those servants came back and settled accounts with them. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here, I've made 5 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over little, and I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. He also, who had the 2 talents, came forward, saying, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Here, I've made 2 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. He also, who had received the 1 talent, came forward, saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here, you have what is yours. But his master answered him, You wicked and slothful servant. You knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have invested my money with bankers, and at my coming I should have received what I have with my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to him who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has, more will be given, and he who will have in abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing. Be seated.
This parable is one of the foundation scriptures that we have of our understanding of how God views us and how he views money. There's a lot of thought when it comes about money or finances or the word that we like to use, stewardship. And there's a lot of emotion around money and those things. But I believe what the scriptures are pointing us to is it is possible to live a flourishing life in all categories. But if we want to have a flourishing life, we have to understand that we need to do it with God's heart, with God's mission. We just have to do it his way. If you've surveyed Jesus' ministry and everything that he talked about, I mean, we've been in it for 2 years. We had to do at least 1 more week before we gave it up. But it is possible that Jesus, throughout his entire ministry, about 25% of the conversations he had and the teachings that he had, 25% of them had to do with finances or money. And the average church, which we fall into, talks about money about 1 to 4 times a year. And yet people still, at the end of the day, say that churches only care about money. And I think I know why. And recently I read a book, and in this book there's a story about Mr. Milton, which I want to share with you today. See, Mr. Milton lived to 106 years old. And it said in this book that he lived a full life, so full that he probably lived more life than 10 men combined. He lived a modest life. He married a woman very young and had 4 girls. One of the family that he moved, goodness gracious, talk, Rob. The family that he married into, there we go, was the Chandler family. Where one of his wife's brothers, his brother-in-law, his name was Asa, and he purchased a product called Coca-Cola. Mr. Milton refused to engage in Coca-Cola, saying things like, I don't want any of Asa's Coca-Cola or whatever he has to have. Because Mr. Milton wanted a life of his own, and he owned a company called a textile mill. The biggest thing that he wanted to talk about was not the textile mill or anything or about his family. All he wanted to talk about was the work of the kingdom of God that he was engaged in. Milton was born to give, as the book said, and his biggest desire, was to get as many Bibles into people's hands as possible all over the world, that he spent the majority of his time figuring out how to distribute Bibles across the entire world, and he called it his projects. And because of the projects he wanted to accomplish, and as his company grew and the more money that he received, he never changed his lifestyle. He had this goal of getting as many Bibles across the world as possible. At the age of 80, he ate the same breakfast for the majority of his life. All the way up until the end of his life, every single day, he started his day sitting in his chair and reading his Bible for 2 hours. And it was told that he probably read through the Bible about 4 times a year. He would go to work, he would come home, and he didn't even get an air conditioning until he was in his 90s, because the nurse that came to take care of him requested it, and he bent a knee to that. He helped get thousands of Bibles all over the world, in Russia, India, Egypt, Central America, and more. And at one point, he himself, not an organization or anything else, he himself was the biggest contributor to Bibles in Bangladesh for 2 years. It was told that he would literally run out of money 2 to 3 times a year, where the bank account would be completely empty. But because of his faithfulness, very soon that money would all come back, and then he would start his projects right back again, continue to give Bibles to as many people as possible. He lived through the World War, Great Depression. He raised a rather large family, even to today's standards. He owned his own business, and he had all the excuses in the world to say, I'm not going to give now because what if this happens? But that didn't stop him. He just kept giving and kept giving and kept giving all the way to the end of his life at 106. And after he passed away, his family came in and was looking through all of his materials and all of his stuff, and they got to his books, his financial books. And they believe, after calculating all of it, he gave somewhere between 80 and 90% of his wealth. And when it comes to sacrificing, see, Mr. Milton in this story really shows us what it looks like to sacrifice. And when you listen to this story, does it happen to make you think about the way that you give a little bit? When you listen to a story like this, do you feel challenged? Do you feel convicted? Maybe a little depressed or filled with anxiety? And I'll ask the same question that I asked myself when I read Mr. Milton's story, which is, what is a reasonable amount of money that you should give away for your entire life for kingdom impact? So starting today, would you consider, if we're looking at Mr. Milton's story, would you consider giving 50% of your income and your net worth away for kingdom work? If 50 is too high, what about 30? 20? Maybe 10%? And I just want you to take a deep breath for a second. I'm not asking anybody to give 50% yet, okay? Or I'm not. Chill out, okay? The room got real quiet real quick. But when we start thinking about how we live, or if you would live, if you gave 10, 20, 30% of your income to the church for kingdom work, what emotion comes up? I bet it was fear. I bet it was anxiety. Man, how am I going to do that? I got all these things. I got a house. I got a family. I mean, what came to mind? See, fear is the number one reason for the reason we don't do anything. Some people say that we don't give because we're greedy or stuff like that. And that might have some things to do with it, but I would say that's like 1% of the population. There might be greedy people, but when it comes time for those greedy people to give 1 cent, I bet you that fear and anxiety comes right up in them. I would say almost 100% of people do not I would say 100% of people don't do anything because they say they have fear. They say, well, what happens if the stock market crashes? What if I lose my job? What if something breaks in my house? What if a kid gets sick? What if we have to name your thing? What if there's medical bills? See, here's my point with all of this. Fear is the number one reason people miss out of God's calling in their life. Fear is the reason people say that church only cares about money. And it's because we do not have a category in our brain. We don't have a category in our heart for kingdom work, to giving to kingdom work in our life. And many people don't have enough margin in their life to even engage in the Great Commission and with giving, like we talked about last week. So when people hear about giving, they start thinking about impact. The world just freezes because they say, how in the world can I do that? You see, in this parable that Drew read a little bit ago in Matthew 25, there's 3 servants that Jesus decides to throw into the story. All 3 of these servants were given something called a talent while the master, the owner, went off on his business or went away for a little while. And this story is called a parable. And all a parable is, functionally, is a fictional story. So it didn't happen. It's a fun story that Jesus tells to try to share with people what heaven is going to be like. It tells something about God, and it tells something about us. That is what a parable is. So the first servant, the master gives 5 talents. And the second he gives 2, and there's another one that he gives 1. And to put it in perspective, through the research that I did, a talent is 10,000 denarii. And a denarii or something like that is a day's wage. So 1 talent in those days was 27 years of salary. And if you take the average income of our area, that would come out today about $1.1 million for 1 talent. And the talent was the greatest number unit that the bankers of the Greeks would use. So the master hands out this money, these talents. He gives 5, 2, and 1. This is a large amount of money. And he's gone away for a long time. Now, in the story, I want you to notice something. The master, when he gives this money, he never instructs these 3 people on what to do with the money. There's no instruction on when he gives them. He gives it to them because they are trustworthy people, and he basically gives them the freedom, the room to do whatever they want with this, in whatever way that they want to invest it, whatever they please. This is what the master gives. And the master comes back a while later to see the servants, to see what they did with that money and see how they're doing. And the first 2 come back, and they bring back his money like he expected, but on top of that, they have doubled it. And the master is pumped, and he gives them a reward, and he says, I will set you over much. Enter the joy of the master. So to put it in a modern perspective, the person with 5 talents, that's $5.5 million. He comes back with $11 million. And the master looks at him, and he says, and I promise you to give you more. I'm going to put you over so much more. You've been trustworthy. You have invested this money. You have done the kingdom work, and it has grown. But the person that I want to focus on for the majority of the time is the last one. See, in the story, it says that the one servant dug up a hole and buried it and hid the master's money. In verse 24, it says, he also had received the 1 talent, and he came forward saying, Master, talking to what he thought about the master. Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you do not sow, and gathering where you scattered no seeds. So I was afraid, and I went and hid the talent in the ground. And he brings it back up, and he says, here's what's yours. Fear of what could have happened prevented this person, this servant, from receiving the reward that the other 2 received. Instead, when it came to take an account of his money, instead of taking ownership and saying, man, I messed up, what he did is he blamed his actions on the master. I didn't use your money right away because I was scared. I was worried about who you were, and if I messed up, I knew that you were going to do something. Remember, this is just a parable. So the story is telling us something about who God is and about who we are or the people are. And I believe Jesus is trying to explain 3 things about God. Number 1, that in every situation when it comes to us interacting with God, number one, God starts off with grace. Every single time. In the story, there were servants. They didn't own anything, especially they didn't own anything of the masters. The master trusted them enough that he freely gave them a allotment of money, a large amount of money. And number two, and this is probably the best one, he gives each person an amount of money according to their talent, and he lets them decide what to do with it. He encourages them to invest in it, but he gives no restrictions or anything. He gives it freely for their ability to do whatever they want with it. And number three, he will ask for an account at some point. And the reason he asks for an account is because he cares about us. And he cares about kingdom work. He cares about the investing. He at some point will look at us and be like, show me receipts. Show me the impact that you made. The very first time I ever invested in the kingdom, the earliest time I remember, I was a sophomore in high school, in college, or college, sorry. I was a sophomore in college. And they always encourage us at Bible college to be a part of some sort of group. Like, be part of some group that's making an impact, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't know where to go, but my roommate at the time, Max, he was the leader of our college chapter called LINK, which is Liberty in North Korea. And he was a part of it, was pumped about it, so I was like, sure, I'll start going to the meetings. And what this company does, this organization does, is we know that North Korea is a terrible place and it just treats people poorly, and there's a lot of people that want to escape. And this company is the middle ground between these people wanting to escape and them living a normal life. So they get a hold of these people, they said they're going to escape, they go into China and other places, and it is up to the chapters of the college to try to do some fundraising, to try to spread the news about North Korea and what they're doing for their people, because we know that it costs a lot of money when somebody is taken out of a certain place and has nothing, and you have to give them housing and medical care and education and all of these things. It costs a lot of money. So when I joined the chapter, they're trying to figure out how is our little bitty college in East Tennessee going to make an impact when it comes to people escaping communism in North Korea. So they had this idea of throwing a big concert fundraiser, and right in the middle of this concert, they were going to talk about what North Korea was all about and how people are trying to escape. And they came up with the idea that the tickets are going to make money, there's going to be a dinner real quick that is going to make money, and they hope that when they share about North Korea that more people will come and give money. And after about a week or two, we came back and met again, and my roommate who was in charge went and talked to a bunch of venues, and they said, okay, I found 2 bands that are going to play, and I found the venue, and it's going to cost $500 to put on this concert. And as an adult, I know that $500 for an event is very cheap. If you've ever done a birthday party or an event, like $500 is nothing, especially if you know the impact that something's going to have. Like, here's $500, I'll figure it out later. Like that is, but to a college student, $500 is a lot of money. Even 10 college students in East Tennessee. None of us had $500 to just give away. $500 was going to impact the rest of our semester, like tremendously. And after the meeting, I was walking back to my dorm, which probably took about 5 minutes, and I felt this strong pull in my heart to give that money. And to give that money without telling anybody, or tell as few people as possible. So I've never given money before. I've never done this before. And I sat with it a while, and I decided that I'm going to just ask a few people that I trusted in my life that if this is what God wants me to do, and this is why I want to give the money. And side note, if a college student or you have a kid in college and they say, hey, I got advice from my fellow college student, please roll your eyes as much as possible at them, because college students should not give advice to anyone, especially their peers. It's never good. But every person I talk to, they would always say, man, that doesn't sound logical. Like, you don't have that money. Like, what happens if you need to buy something? What happens if you run out of food in your dorm? What happens if your car breaks down and you can't get back home? What happens if... And they kept naming their things over and over again. And after sitting with it for a little bit longer and going to these meetings and saying, we're still praying that God's going to present this money to us, somebody's going to donate this money, we believe somebody's going to donate money. It was just like a knife in my heart, like every single time. And I decided, okay, I'm going to give the money. And the event went great. It was fun. The bands were awesome. One of the bands had like a small following in Knoxville, so they all showed up. And this little square room was connected to a restaurant. So the restaurant kind of heard music going on, and there was like this double pane glass. So people could see like a concert going on while they're eating. So after people got done eating, they just went down the hall and bought tickets. And everybody heard about what's happening in North Korea, and they raised a good amount of money for it, and it was awesome. And then the event was over. 1 week later, I went to check my mailbox, which is just like a tiny little mailbox, and in there was a check from Johnson University, where I went. It was from the registrar that they went through all of our accounts, and they found a few people where they made an accounting error. And in that check was double what I gave and a little bit more. So I immediately went and cashed the check and took my wife, Kaylee, to a little small steak dinner. Here's the scary thought about this. What if God is calling you to give beyond your comfort level? Would you be afraid? Would you try to explain it away or dismiss it as impractical? And in the process, would you miss out on the harvest that God has for his people that is preparing in your heart in the first place? One author said this: in fact, all of the things that keep Christians from stepping out of their comfort zone, fear may be the most significant. Sure, greed plays a part, but I think more times than not, we simply what if ourselves out of giving the way that we'd like to. What if the economy falls apart? Or what if we lose a job? Or what if another war breaks out? Or what if I have an unexpected expense? What if I can't pay my bills? See, over time, you can grow accustomed to explaining away your opportunities to give. Your heart can become numb to the needs around you, needs that God intended you to meet. And all of that starts with fear. When we are talking about all of these things, we're talking about money, we're talking about giving, kingdom impact, what are the what ifs that come to your mind? Whatever is right in front of you, right immediate in front of you, when you're thinking about this, when you start thinking, what are the what ifs? See, for the servant, it was the what if was, what if the master is going to hurt me? What if he throws me away? What if I lose my job? What if I lose a little bit of this money and don't get the return that I'm hearing my friends get? What if? See, we need to get something straight about money real quick. See, money in church is really weird. See, out of all the parables of Jesus, I think there's about 38 of them. 16 of them are about money. So it's a crazy amount of parables that are about money when it comes. It's almost half. And did you know that not once did Jesus ask for people to give him money? Not once did Jesus ask other people to give God money. There is this like weird story where Jesus instructs somebody to go fishing and there's like a coin in the fish's mouth and then he uses it for the temple tax. Like there is that awkward, weird story, and I think he gave the money back at some point. But did you know that Jesus never asks for money? What Jesus does do, the majority of his conversations about money, is he explains that it is a tool that should be used to extend the kingdom. It is a tool for kingdom work. It is used to fund ministry. It is used to make an impact. It's used to change people's life. And he recommends and he commands for you to be a part of that. And it's really important to understand this because so many people say, I give 10% back to God, or I should give 10% back to God, or I give something back to God, which is not wrong. I don't want to discourage you on that, but it's not the whole story. You are giving money to fund God's kingdom work to win the earth. It goes to helping the poor, the orphans, to fund projects to teach the Bible. It goes to get people into this door to hear the gospel and experience Christ? If you walk through this door at any point over the past year and you wonder, man, I don't know how I got to this church, it's because people have been faithful to fund ministry. That's why. If you are somebody that gives to this ministry, I'm going to put your mindset, hopefully I can get your mindset in the right direction. If you give to this if you give to this ministry and somebody walks through this door, it's because you invested in this ministry. If you come to Sunday morning and you invest in this ministry and we have church, you should have joy because you are the reason that ministry is happening. The reason that we give shoes to people in Southern Kentucky is because people invest. The reason that we have an Easter egg hunt and so many people come to that is because you invest. The reason that we have women's ministry, men's ministry is because you invest. The reason that we see kids get good education and are taken off the street into our orphanage in Liberia is because you invest in the kingdom. The reason women around the world, specifically in Kentucky, are coming off the streets out of the sex industry and living a full life for the kingdom is because you invest in the ministry. When you see somebody get baptized in this church, it's because you invested in the kingdom and the good news got to somebody outside of this church and they came here and they gave their life to Christ. We use the tool of money to invest as a means to an end, and the end is Jesus. We use money to invest in kingdom work to get poor people and elevate them to the standard of Jesus. We take women who have been in the sex industry with Refuge for Women and we invest in their ministry and we elevate them to the standard at which God views all women. We invest in this ministry to get as many people into this room to share the good news about Jesus, not so we can pack this room, but because the ending is Jesus and people following Jesus. So instead of thinking that you have an obligation to give, let's start thinking like Jesus. Of how am I going to invest into kingdom work so that I see a return? If you invest in this ministry and you show up and you see all these things happening and you've been a part of it for a really long time, you should have joy. You should be thankful because you're making a huge impact. See, over this series, it's going to be about 4 weeks, you're going to hear a lot of stories of investing in the kingdom and how God is moving and how God will always double the amount that we think is going to happen. But I'll share one last story before I tell you what's next. See, I want to tell you that I'm a church camp kid. Like I got called into ministry at Bluegrass Christian Camp just right down the road. I met a couple people from Bible college. They pulled me aside and said, I think that you can be a preacher. And I said, okay, let's figure this out together. And I love speaking at camps because of that. Any camp that invites me to come speak, I'm going to say yes as fast as I can. And I'm going to try my best to make it happen. And I love when you can take a kid, a high school kid, and you put them at a week of camp and you take away their phone, you take away their boyfriend, you take away their girlfriend, and you just see what happens when you've just forced them to focus on Jesus and Christian community for like 6 days. It's life-changing. I got invited to speak at a winter retreat at White Mills Christian Camp, which is located on the other side of E-Town. It's just about an hour and 30 minutes away. And when I got to camp, it is a very nice camp. It's well kept. They have updated it along the way. And I preached about 4 times on that weekend. Our team came with us and they led worship. It was amazing. And a week later, I went to a event that a group of men called Men for Christ. And I try to go to those as much as possible. Men for Christ, if you're new with us, was the organization that funded the start of this church. They gave us a lot amount of money to purchase everything that we need, and the reason that we started was really because of them. And they heard that I went to White Mills to preach to these high school kids at their camp. And when I walked in the door, I had like 10 to 15 really old guys just surround me. Like the men who go to Men for Christ, like they're older than every single person in this room. If they're the oldest person in this room, they're older, I promise. So they didn't run to me to talk to me, like they just like shuffled their feet really fast to get to me. And they all have grins on their face. And they say, did you preach at White Mills? I'm like, yeah, it's a great camp. I had a great time. And they're like, it's nice, isn't it? And I'm like, yes, it's very nice. The dorms are great. The cafeteria is great. And they're like, oh, you went in the cafeteria? And I'm like, yes, that's where we ate. Yeah. And they're like, did you know it's new? I'm like, now I do, I guess. What are you guys getting at? And all of these 15 guys smiled and they said, we fundraised for 6 months to build that so that more kids can go to camp and there's more room for kids at camp. And I was like, that's incredible. Because I know that, and you know that camp is not for old people. They're not for 80, 90-year-olds. Like, it's not. It's for, like, birth through high school, maybe college age. Like, it is for the young kids. And these people spent a lot of their money and fundraised a lot of other people's money to build this crazy-looking cafeteria in dorm rooms. And about 10 minutes later, I sat down, and the camp director got up. He had a little spot at the beginning, and he said that because we built the cafeteria and we redid the dorms over this past year, we already have record attendance pre-registered for camp this past year. And all of these old men just started clapping as loud as possible. They never get excited about anything, but they were pumped. And what I learned being around these older guys and being a part of church for so many years. See, as you move forward in your relationship with God, occasionally He will test your grip on your wallet. And it's a faith thing. It doesn't happen every week or every month or maybe even every year, but every so often God will prompt you to step out of your generosity comfort zone. And if you really want to keep God in the center of control of your life and you want to follow Him, there is a line that we need to be willing to cross. We so much willing to be able to go after and rely fully on our financial, where we can't rely on our financial stockpiles, but rely fully on the Lord Himself as provider. 2 Corinthians 9, 6-8 says this. The point is this: whoever sows sparingly will reap sparingly, and whoever sows bountifully will reap bountifully. Each of you will give as he has decided in his heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to make grace abound in you, so that having all sufficiency and all things at all time, you may abound in every good work. So here's what we're going to do as a church, something we've never done before. We are going to encourage every single one of you to invest into the kingdom. At the end of this month, we are going to do a special Thanksgiving offering, and I encourage all of you to be a part of it. And what this Thanksgiving offering is going to go, it's going to go partially to, right now, to our two mission partners. We have Refuge for Women and we have Psalm 82:3. We're going to give some of that to there. And then the other portion of that is going to pre-invest into next year's ministry and kingdom work. Everything that we have planned next year, our normal calendar that we have planned for next year, people that we haven't even met yet that are going to walk through this door, we are going to pre-invest into the kingdom so that the end is as many people as possible will know Christ. So I encourage you over the next 3 weeks to think about this work, to think about this verse. That each of you must give what has been decided in your heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion. For God loves a cheerful giver. Whatever God has placed in your heart, when you hear all these stories and you engage over the next 3 to 4 weeks, you hear about what God is doing in Lexington, you hear what God is doing at this church, you hear what God can do in the future. Whatever God places on your heart, just like me when I was in college, I encourage you to step into that and see what God does. Because I promise you, you'll never forget it. You'll never regret it. And you'll see the impact that you make in the kingdom for generations to come, not just right now. So God, as we talk about investing in your kingdom, God, as we just talk about money and the way that we wrap our head around it, God, as we talk about your kingdom work over the next 4 weeks, I pray that you prepare our hearts. God, I ask that you move us in a direction that you want. God, I know that there's some people in this room that have never given. I know that there's some people in this room that have always stayed faithful at 10%, and I know that there's some people that give more than 10%, and I know that you are going to make an impact, and you're going to move some people that don't think they're going to be moved into a new season of generosity. I know you're going to ask some people to give a lot. You're going to ask some people to give for the first time. And every single step that somebody makes, it is going to make a giant impact in people's life. God, I've already seen it over the past 4 years of the impact that you have made through Elevate Christian Church. And I know that you are going to double the impact every single year as we move forward. God, at this point, we have no reason to doubt you. So as we move forward in the ministry that you've placed before us, God, let us be faithful. Let us continue to love the people around us, and I pray that we can see a way that we can have margin in our life to make a giant impact for your kingdom. God, you are so good. You are so faithful. And we ask this all in your Son's name. Amen.